Well, now that I'm alive and kicking again, I suppose it's time I try once again to bring back Hidden Games, which hasn't seen a new video in like 12 months. And I'm gonna do that right now by reviewing one of the outright strangest video games I've ever played in my life, the Neverhood. Now, for those of you who've played this game, I know what you're thinking. The Neverhood isn't a hidden game. It's like one of the most famous point-and-click adventure games of all time. And yes, that's true, but not a lot of people have actually played the Neverhood. In fact, I bet half the people subscribed to me haven't even heard of it before. The Neverhood is a cult classic, for sure, but it's also a forgotten cult classic. It's underrated, and I want to talk about it. So let's do it! First of all, let me start out by saying, this game scared the living shit out of me when I was a kid. I mean, really, it just scares me. I can't look at it for too long without going insane. As it goes, the Neverhood is a point-and-click adventure game animated almost entirely out of clay. And right off the bat, that's what makes it so unique. It's also what makes it so scary to me. Because I'm afraid of clay. Like anyone else, I have my own share of fears. I'm afraid of flies, I'm afraid of the sun, I'm afraid of long, pale faces with wide, gaping eyes, but more than anything else, I'm afraid of clay. And I mean animated clay. Stuff like Gumby, Creature Comforts, and The Adventures of Mark Twain. That stuff terrified me as a child. Which is not to say I'm not impressed by stop motion. I'm very impressed by it. I think stop motion is one of the hardest, rawest art forms you can successfully pull off. And it's amazing to watch. And for that reason, I love the Neverhood. The Neverhood follows the story of Clayman, a weird, lanky, blocky looking guy who walks around like he just doesn't give a fuck. Clayman lives in a big, wacky world known as the Neverhood, a place completely composed of clay. Clay buildings, clay houses, clay people, and weirdness. Lots and lots and lots of weirdness.
Oh, it's you! Hi! Go away! The guy goes and he keeps coming back. I don't get it. I wish he'd just go away. He'll probably do it again.
The game starts out with Clayman sleeping on the floor in his house. At first, he wakes up, and then he proceeds to bash his bedroom door open with a giant hammer. After that, he exits the house with absolutely no explanation of what's going on, and from there, you're free to explore the Neverhood. And that's pretty much the point. You have to walk around and solve puzzles, like in any point-and-click adventure game, but what the game's really about is just exploring the Neverhood, and seeing all the strange things that happen in it. This is a weird world to behold, and I can promise you, you'll never explore anything quite like it in any other game. The Neverhood is freaking bizarre, and everything that happens in it is freaking bizarre. Sometimes things like this will happen. Sometimes things like this will happen. And sometimes, oh god. Well, this, ladies and gentlemen, is the pain of my existence. Yeah, excuse me, but what the living hell was that? Yeah, you want to tell me this game isn't scary? It's just a cute little game with lots of colors and funny little cartoon characters? Well, you know what? Try playing it when you're 5 years old. Jesus Christ. In a lot of ways, this game kinda reminds me of Yellow Submarine. Nothing about it seems to make much sense, at least when it comes to just looking at it. You see a lot of random surreal things, and you have to try and make sense of it all one way or another. Believe it or not though, there is actually a story to this game. All around the environment, there are these little disc things that you can pick up off the ground, and if you manage to collect each and every one of them, they all tell a story about how the Neverhood came to be.
These discs tell a story. Story about good. Story about bad. These discs are all that are left of the true story. True story of the closing of the Third Age.
But aside from this, there's hardly any other dialogue in the game. Clayman himself is a pretty mute character. He doesn't really say anything, and never seems to have any clue what's going on around him. And apart from him, there are only a few other characters. There's Willie Trombone, Clayman's best friend, who you hardly ever see. There's Hoborg, a big robot guy who's apparently the creator of the Neverhood, who you also hardly ever see. And then there's the main antagonist, Clog, an angry little dude with a horn on his head, who you also hardly ever see. And aside from that, there's really no one else around. It's bizarrely empty half the time. The world feels a bit barren and lifeless, like you're exploring the ruins of an old, lost, abandoned civilization or something. But I guess that's the charm of it. Like I said, the story isn't the reason to play this game. The reason to play it is just to experience it, to admire the imaginative, handcrafted world, and all the ambitious claymation playing out before your eyes. It's exhaustively detailed, and there's a hell of a lot to get lost in along the way. And to make things weirder, it has one of the most unusual soundtracks you'll ever hear in a video game. If there's one thing I don't like about this game, I think it'd have to be the puzzles. The puzzles you have to solve are just annoying, for lack of a better word. Point-and-click adventure games almost always have reliably terrible puzzles. But with the Neverhood, it's not that its puzzles are terrible per se, it's that they're, well, evil. At first, the puzzles start out pretty simple. They're easy to figure out and actually pretty creative and fun to solve. But later in the game, they just get fucking irritating. Take this matching puzzle, for example. See this matching puzzle? Yeah, in order to get this matching puzzle right, you have to do it all in one try. One single try. You can't mess up even once, or you start over. So you basically have to memorize where every little picture is, or just write it down on a piece of paper before you go completely berserk thinking about it and lose your mind. There are a lot of other puzzles like this, too. Remember how I said you have to pick up little discs to complete the game? Well, some of those discs are incredibly hard to find, and some of them are just located in the most asinine places. For example, to find one of the discs, you have to walk down a hallway. A long hallway. A very, 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 very long hallway. Seriously, I'm not even kidding. It takes nearly 15 minutes to get to the end of this hallway and back. It's freaking absurd. But, you know, I guess that's what's special about it. The Neverhood is absurd. It's meant to be absurd, and there's a reason it's a cult classic. It's a special game, unique among all others, and aesthetically, it may be the most original point-and-click adventure game ever made, despite the fact that it still terrifies me. If you haven't checked out the Neverhood, check it out right now. It's an old game, and it might be hard to find in a decent condition, but if you're a fan of things strange and unusual, it's a must-have. Absolutely, positively, basement-worthy. Oh, also, as for Doug TeNapel, and Skull Monkeys, and the upcoming Armacrog, and Doug TeNapel's infamous hateful comments, maybe we'll talk about that another time. Maybe.
Sound effects record number 32. Man reading. Man relaxing. Woman in outer space. Man watching television with volume at 0.